NIL money is talking and dudes are walking. And if we can bring back direwolves, can't we figure out the transfer portal? Plus, the NFL draft is fast approaching. How do you mentally prepare for something like this? And then what do you do after that? We talk all these things with the former Notre Dame All-American, 8-year NFL vet, attorney, and 20-plus year Division I athletic director Larry Williams on today's episode of No Warmup. You've heard him many times, at least mentioned by name on our show. This is my father, Larry Williams. He's the current athletic director of University of San Francisco. Go Dons. We are bringing him on for a multitude of reasons. One, he has insight and knowledge that we definitely don't have from experience being an athletic director in the current climate of college sports and the NCAA and what is going on there. How is that going to evolve over the future, over the next few months and years? And then secondarily, we would love to pick his brain as to how even the professional realm, sports specific, have changed. And we're talking about NFL most succinctly here with his experience. So with that, Dad, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Scott. Thanks, Nick. It's good to see you guys again. I don't get to see you much anymore.
It's been about 20 years for us, Larry.
You're aging well, Nick. You're aging well.
So are you. You look the exact same.
Yeah,
look great.
Not a chance, pal.
We're all looking great today. All right, Scott, what you want to start off with the NFL stuff?
Yeah, I think it makes sense, Dad. Look, as I just mentioned right there, you had roughly 8-9 years in the league playing offensive line, guard, tackle. I don't know if you got a little burn at center, but that may be thrown.
It was a little uncomfortable. That was still the under center. The quarterback would get the ball under center. That was a little uncomfortable for me.
Pre-shotgun era.
No, I want to bring this up because you played with one of the greats, at least within Cleveland Browns lore, in Bernie Kosar. And he happened to be the first $1 million quarterback, if I'm not mistaken, within the NFL. So looking at your experience there, playing with him, playing with the back end of the cardiac kids, if I'm not mistaken there as well. And then fast forwarding to today's day and age when you're getting quarterbacks who are making $55-60 million a year. Can you maybe just give us some insight as to how your experience was with the NFLPA and that entire explosion of payment specifically toward quarterbacks, and then how it's evolved to today?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's just been such an interesting history. I'm not sure that I can capture it all in the current in our current time frame. Let me go to a quick story. So I'm in the huddle. I'm in second year. I've emerged as a starter. I'm pretty fired up. I'm pretty intense about everything. And one of our tackles, who's just a year, maybe 2 years older than me, comes into the huddle and he's all grumpy. And our quarterback, Bernie, who you just referenced, says, "What's wrong, man? You're usually up, you got upbeat. You always giving us energy. What's going on?" He says, "Dang, my agent is trying to get a new deal for me. Shoot, man, I was making more at SMU than I'm making now." And so how wild the world turns in that now we're seeing the legality of that system that the NCAA was trying to stamp down. But the realities of the NFL when I first joined was that there was no free agency. So we went out on strike in '87. Just that next year, we went out on strike, and for the right to move from team to team at the end of your contract, and therefore create leverage in your negotiating, we gave back salary caps, right? So we had salary caps every year that limited the amount we could earn by a particular negotiated percentage of overall gross revenue from the NFL. So that would be ticket sales, media rights. There was a designated pool of money that was used to calculate what our cap was going to be, and just so happens in the NFL they have almost full rev share, so all programs shared in all the media rights, they shared in all the ticket revenue, they all shared equally. So getting a percentage of that was really clean. It gave the players an ownership interest in the operation. And away we went, and it's gone from Bernie Kosar getting $1 million essentially personally from the owner of the team to now all of that is handled under the gross revenues that have grown exponentially because the league has run it so cleanly, and now the players really get to enjoy the benefit of that. So you fast forward from Bernie to Deshaun Watson, who gets $275 million guaranteed. Like, holy cow, has that gone differently, right?
Oof.
Either backup lineman or bad offensive lineman like me, or $1 million is like, that's chump change. So I'm jealous, I'll tell you that. And I'm also jealous of today's college athletes too. Holy
But
cow. The
that
deals
is
we're getting now are
so
great.
interesting what you
Yeah.
say about your teammate who was making more money at SMU, and then granted they ended up getting in a little bit of trouble for that back in the day. But now we were just talking about this on the show, I think last week, Scott, how some college athletes now are trying to stay in college longer because their earning potential is higher in college than if they were to go pro in whatever it is. And we've seen it for some basketball players, and especially for some women's basketball players. And well, I think we'll get into some more of that college stuff down the line. But going back, so how did it work then when you switched teams, when you went from the Cleveland Browns to the other teams that you played for? Like, what was the process of that like?
Yeah, so this salary cap and free agency was actually the product of two different strikes. One in '87, and one I forgot how many years later, maybe 4 years later, 5 years later. But the first iteration in '87 got us this thing called Plan B free agency, and I'm proud to say that there was about a 5-hour moment in time where where I was the highest earner in free agency in the NFL.
Whoa.
So I was a Plan B free agent, and I went from the Browns to the Chargers. I should have gone to the Bills. That would have been a much better deal for me because I would have gotten in the Super Bowl bunch. But I had a signing bonus that was, you'd laugh at today, but it was a massive deal at the time, and it was about 4 years later where full free agency took over. In that, after your first contract, you had the right to be able to put yourself out to bid for the other teams in the league. Does that make sense?
Yeah. This is like, okay, so it's crazy when we talk about the difference in pay and like how much these guys are making nowadays in the NFL with all the free agency and everything. But there's a story that you told. I can't remember where I saw this, but you were giving a speech and you were talking about how, I think your rookie year in the NFL, you got caught on an away trip, maybe studying for law school.
Yeah.
Scott and I were talking earlier. Like, I don't think that many guys in today's modern NFL are probably studying for law school on their away trips. Can you talk about that a little bit and kind of what happened there?
Yeah. So the context of it is the guys that I joined. Scott, you referenced the cardiac kids. I got the tail end of the cardiac kids guys. Those cats had to work off-season jobs.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? They couldn't make ends meet.
It's like the European League.
By just playing football. So they had to have another job. So I'm sort of coming out of that, and I see a bunch of guys out there that they're, quite frankly, they're struggling, right? They made a bunch of money in the NFL, but they're struggling because it's not sustainable. The money's like cotton candy. It just sort of evaporates, right? You've got a bunch of people you got to pay. You live a different lifestyle, and the money's gone. So I see a bunch of that happening, and my thought process is I'm having these little rugrats, one of which is named Scott. I'm thinking, holy cow, how am I going to afford all these cats when I'm done? I'm making decent money, but I'm not making great money. And what the hell am I going to do? I didn't pay enough attention, quite candidly, to my undergraduate education.
Okay.
And all my classmates were making jumps ahead of me. So I thought, I got to get something done. So I went to law school at night because, in the ABA, you've got your first year courses are all year-long courses. So you can't just go in the off season. So I would go 4 nights a week down to Cleveland State, which had a night program, which was ABA accredited. And it worked out well. And yes, I did get busted on one of my away trips. I was studying, and I was threatened with an immediate cut if in fact I did that ever again. And sure enough, after a little while, I kind of figured out, doggone it, the coach is right, man. He should cut me. He's paying me to play football. I'm on an away trip. I should be working on my relationships with my teammates so that we can play better on Sunday. So he's absolutely right. That's what he should be able to demand that. But that's what got me essentially into college athletics. I just love that combination of academics and athletics at the highest level in both. And I want to try to preserve that. It's being tested now. It is being tested.
Yeah, I was gonna say right there. I mean, even just in that story, today's day and age, it feels like it went all the way back to that moment that you're speaking to, and like guys are looking for their next opportunity as opposed to focusing on the season or team at hand, and developing those relationships and pushing forward as a team together. They're just like, hey, okay, where can I get mine? Where can I go next? What's the highest bidder? And tossing names out there. So it's interesting that even in that moment, you at least had the wherewithal to realize. Was that Coach Mudd that was the one that came at you there?
No. Mudd was good. Mudd was actually really, really funny. He was smart as hell. So he got it. He knew I was doing it. It was the head coach, that real stern German guy.
German guy.
I'll leave his name out of it. But God rest his soul. He was awesome.
Well,
just pretty stern.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. I want to further that though with my side question there with Coach Mudd, and maybe you could speak to it a little more. And I know he recently passed away, but he is just solidified in NFL lore as being the lineman whisperer. Is that right? Can you maybe give a little more color?
It's so true. A quick story. So first day after we get drafted, the draft at that time was all on the same day. And so they put you on a flight the next day, and then you're in training camp right away. It's a mini camp, I'll say. And first day, and we get out on the field, and he says, "All right, everybody get in your stance." So all these guys, the guys that were drafted, and all the free agents, and all the starters, and everybody else, we're all out there, and everybody gets in the stance. And he comes and looks at me and like twists his head a couple ways, walks around me, and I'm going, "What in the hell is this guy doing?" And he's looking at me. He looked at me and said, "Hey, number 70. And he didn't know my name. He said, "Number 70. What the are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm in my stance. This is what I learned how to do. This is how they taught me at Notre Dame." Oh. And he said, "Oh, good God, we got a long way to go, man." But he was unbelievable. You say the whisperer. He was so good at getting crappy athletes like me to be really good offensive linemen by virtue of technique. And we would work technique like crazy. My fingers are all busted up because it was all about how can you use your hands to neutralize the defensive lineman. And his techniques were unbelievably impeccable. Lost now in the NFL with the reduction in practice hours by virtue of the collective bargaining, is that focus on technique. So it's a much sloppier game. In the interior, and I would argue in some of the passing game than it ever was at the time. At the time, it was, man, we beat the crap out of each other with our practice times.
That is so interesting because I remember when my brother was with the 49ers a couple of years ago. He's on the practice squad, but just hearing like what his day-to-day was like, and remember being so surprised about how little they practice. And this was a couple of years ago. And so comparing that back to when you guys were practicing all the time, is there anything in particular that you can point to, especially with offensive line play, like diving into that sloppiness that you're talking about?
Yeah. So I don't want to get too. Nobody's interested in offensive linemen, but really the realities were we had to be able to fire our hands inside the frame, and so these awesome athletes like Lawrence Taylor and Howie Long really were adept at avoiding that sort of opportunity for an offensive lineman. They were awesome at it. But now offensive linemen are able to come in and, as Howard called it, you crab grab, right? So you come from the outside and you grab each side of the shoulders, and that's okay. Oh, that would have been a 10-yard penalty like that back when we were playing. And now guys are just relying on being able to grab the guy in front of you and just hang on. which before it was, that was just, you couldn't do it. You would get called in a heartbeat. So that's one example. Sorry, offensive line stuff for most people, it's really boring. It's really exciting.
This is an offensive line friendly show.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Exactly.
You got to improve your ratings, man. We got to get you a quarterback or a wide receiver.
Yeah, exactly. Well, piggybacking off of that, do you think there's also an issue? Because even from when Nick and I were playing in college, we were practicing, we were still doing two-a-days, we were still doing practice throughout the week. Maybe toward the back end of our career, we started paring that down to maybe like 3 full pads per week. But in the college game, it seems as though they're also going in that direction where they're maybe having shells on once, twice a week. Do you see that being an issue moving forward into the NFL and technique as you're speaking to?
Oh, I think so. I absolutely do think that the college game has really suffered in that regard. But it's a balance act, Scott. So we limit to 20 hours those countable required hours that we could work with our kids, right? So it makes sense. It's a balance between that academics and athletics. You're not supposed to overwhelm these guys with constant inane practicing. And so I get it. At the pro level, that's different though. Remember, I mean, that's all you're doing is being a pro. There, the CBA has taken into account the number of injuries and tries to make it a injury reduction issue as opposed to a life balance issue. And so I see the pro game as getting hurt both by less qualified new employees and not being able to develop them as far as they possibly could. So it's a little bit, it's a complicated, but I get it. It's a balance act.
Yeah.
Getting into some of this college stuff a little bit more, like we alluded to in the NIL stuff. I mean, you've been an athletic director since 2004, right? With UP, was that the first?
Long time, yeah. I don't really remember the dates, but yeah, it was early 2000s is when I made the jump from practicing law and marketing, licensing, particularly into athletic directorship.
Okay. How then? So you've been in a pre-NIL and now post-NIL.
Yeah.
From your perspective as the athletic director, what feels to be the biggest changes that you see kind of day to day in your experience?
I think the biggest change is combined with not just NIL, but the portal.
Yeah.
Dictates that coaches can't coach hard. They can't coach you hard anymore. They can't give you consequences for poor decisions. Now, those poor decisions could be just because you didn't make the right cut, or they could be that you went out and screwed up Saturday night. They can't coach you that hard anymore. They can't bark at you without, facing consequences of their own, be it being sued or whatever. So we're living in a different time. And candidly, I think that we've lost some of our magic, some of the secret sauce that we had. We could take college athletics and we could use that to mold young men and young women into marvelous people. Not that the people today aren't marvelous,
right,
but it's just harder to do because you don't have the same toolkit that you did before.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Going back to your story, where you were studying law on the away trip, and then you had this kind of realization of, I love this combination of athletics and academics at the highest level. And Scott, like the stuff that we've talked about, how if you extrapolate this out down the line, you could possibly even see in some of these big sports programs disconnecting from the universities. It's just, I mean, do you have any insight on this or this type of possibility?
I don't have any insight, but I have a lot of fear. I think you're dead right, Nick. I think, you look at the popular media, yep, and very rarely is there ever the reference that there was previously to the academic component. I try to preach to in fact, at our staff meeting yesterday, I said, look, we got to distinguish ourselves from all the other entertainment out there. We've got to retrench ourselves in the academic realm that gave rise to this opportunity. And for the rest of my living days, I'm going to try to figure out how to keep that thing together because it's so valuable. You guys both were beneficiaries of it.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be such a shame if we lose that opportunity. So many young men and young women got the chance to get a great education through sport. And now that's gone. Now that's not, I shouldn't say it's gone, but it certainly looks like it's on the way out the door.
It definitely feels like it's waning, and under the shadow of this $2.8 billion NCAA settlement. Could you give us a little insight as to what in the world is going on for the layman out here who's just seeing NIL as this just all-encompassing thing that's changing college sports so drastically?
Yeah, really, it's the NIL is sort of the moniker that's been given because it was the one crack in the dike that opened up. So now everything becomes name, image, and likeness.
Right.
But really, it's a proxy for paying athletes for their athletic performance. And so we can mask it all we want, but we've got to figure out how to embrace it and then figure out how to make sure that the opportunity for kids to make money. And I'm not saying that's bad at all. Don't get me wrong. But the opportunity to make money is still coupled with the academic components that made college athletics so special. And that has exploded. It's being used to provide roster value as opposed to market value.
Right.
We in the NCAA, I'm guilty of it as well as everybody else, that we haven't figured out yet how to do that right. So this court case that's going on right across the bay from me over in Oakland is sort of the next iteration, the next manifestation of this growth from complete amateurism to now the opportunity for individuals to make money. It's got so many deep nuances to it. It's hard to really encapsulate in one conversation.
Right.
But we're faced now with some great challenges because the NCAA has finally thrown up their hands and said, "Look, okay, the courts have told us, the Supreme Court's told us that everything we do is going to be scrutinized by antitrust rules, and therefore we've got to figure out, a different way to do business." So right now we're seeing some explosive growth in opportunities for young men and young women to make money.
Yeah. I mean, what were you saying there? I think like having these athletes make money is not necessarily the problem. Like what we've talked about a bunch is the transfer portal, this free for all and kind of Wild West where kids can just bounce around. And we're seeing some of the best players in football and basketball. You look at their history and they've been at 3 or 4 universities, like a new school each year. Ideally, how would you, if you say you had a magic wand and you can kind of control the rules here on what we do with the transfer portal, do you have anything in mind on how we can kind of rein this in a little bit? We went from, okay, you had to sit out a year if you transfer, to now do whatever you want. How would you?
Yeah. So I sort of harken back to my roots. Recall that we talked earlier at the start of the show about the transformation in the NFL from no free agency to a modified free agency system. I think we should be targeting something like that.
Yeah.
Such that after your first contract, and maybe the minimum contract is 2, maybe it's 3 years. Right. Then you could be eligible for some sort of migration opportunity because, candidly, we give the kids an opportunity to choose when we try to preserve their right to choose where they want to go to school. Right. And sometimes they choose incorrectly. They didn't have the right academic background. They didn't have the right opportunity athletically, whatever. So yes, they should be given the right to go try it at another place. But there has to be some balance there between what the university's putting in to their education, to their ability to go out and get a new one. So I would look to something that would be a minimum commitment especially in your first iteration. And then as we look at the latter parts, are there stages where you can trigger your own free agency and your opportunity to move? Problem is that we don't have a platform to do that. We can't collectively bargain right now because there's too many dispersed interests in the world right now. So we got to first figure out how to carve this up into different units that can have essentially different rules based on their own sport. And those would include some sort of limits on how many times you could transfer and when that transfer opportunity would be. So in my mind, that's how I think about it.
Interesting. Yeah. I wonder too, does that change depending on the level? So you got the Big Four now since the Pac-12 dissolved and everything like that. You talk about these collective bargaining groups, so the NFL, you have the NFLPA. So that's who the owners and the decision makers of the NFL go to speak to make decisions for the players and with the players. Do you see different levels? Is that what you're speaking to? So like the Big Four would have their own collective bargaining group, and then the mid majors may have some, and then depending on the sport, those would also be parsed down into smaller and smaller groups. Is that what you're speaking?
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, Scott. And I also think it makes a lot of sense to federate by sport. I think each sport has to have a different mechanism to create the right fairness between opportunity and sanity. So when you think about each different sport, you guys played football, right? So developing as a football player, you sort of develop a little later in life because you get your man strength, mid-20s. So there's a different mechanism to growing a football player. Likewise, basketball is different. Soccer's entirely different, right? So soccer's got a year-round schedule, and it's just a different development, and the outcomes are at different points. So I think each sport has to federate by sport most efficiently, and then I like your idea of tiering it depending on where you're designated, and maybe that tiering. Nick, you're over there in the EU. Maybe there is the what do they call it? Relegation.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
You can earn your way up into the next level. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Where we were diving deep into this and talking about it specifically within pro sports, would the states? We're looking at the NBA right now. Ratings are apparently down. That could be for a multitude of reasons, but the game has changed so much to where you can almost point to it. If there's smoke, there's fire, that fans are just getting turned off by the style of play, right? So we were talking about pro sports potentially having a relegation system to help incentivize players to continue playing at a high level, putting in all the effort, continuing to do that when they're still making a lot of money. But it's interesting that you're talking about it in the college realm, because we saw St. Francis, after making the play into the tournament, deciding to drop from D-1 to D3. So I don't know where I'm going with this thought thread right here, but it is really intriguing. I do want to go back, not to derail the conversation, but you were talking earlier about developmental issues, specifically with football, technique in offensive linemen, but you could span that across all the different positions. The NFL is notoriously the one league that doesn't really have a developmental program under their banner, right? So at what point does the NFL look to maybe the degradation of gameplay in the specific athletes and say, okay, enough is enough. We need to actually put money into developing players and creating a developmental league. Is that a potential here with how things are moving in the college realm?
No, because they're looking just at the ratings, and the ratings have done nothing but skyrocket. They're not looking at for the life of me. Like, why would you look at the? I actually was talking to Roger Goodell at one event, and I've worked in college athletics for a long time, and I said, Roger, come on, like you got to help out these schools, smaller schools. You got to help out the game of football. You've got to invest in your minor league franchise. And he looked at me with these, like, what I want to do that for? This works perfect for me.
Yeah.
And so there's no incentive for him to do that. As long as colleges are willing to do it, why do they want to do it? It's expensive.
Yeah, this is a thing. Actually, we talked about a little bit, because college football creates these stars, and they come into the NFL and they're already stars. They already have fans and followers. And I mean, we talked about the diminishing ratings in the NBA. Well, they have the G League. Nobody watches the G League. Sport that would benefit more from kind of supporting their college college counterpart will be the NBA to really dive in and support college basketball. But I think the NFL, I mean, they're putting all their money into expanding internationally, coming over here and playing.
Yeah. They want your market, Nick.
They're getting it. They are getting it. I actually went to the first ever NFL game here in Germany, in Munich, and it was Seahawks and Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it's pretty cool to see. But this is like they love it over here. So I'm curious to see it continue to extend. What are your thoughts on that?
Can I ask you a question on that one?
Of course.
So reported is that every ticket is sold at those things.
Okay.
Every one of the European games that they host, every ticket is sold.
So for the Germany one, the first one, I think it was in 2022, the one that we went to, they put the tickets for sale online. And I think the stadium, the capacity was like 80,000, 70,000 tickets available. And there were 5 million people trying to get tickets to this game, crash the website, crash the ticket sales. And every single one is completely sold out. And so it's really, really cool. Now, I don't know if that's just because of the scarcity. If we have more, if we have, say, 8 or 16 games over here, would it be the same thing? But right now, with the 1 or 2 or 3 games that they're having here in Germany, they are packed out, and it's really, really cool to see.
So it's a Taylor Swift concert.
Essentially, it's an event, and I think a Taylor Swift concert too.
Same sort of energy.
Same sort of energy. I'm cheering just as loud at both of these. Going back to the NIL, I mean, I think we see a lot of the possible negatives, the NIL and transfer portal. Excuse me. But is there anything positive you can take away from this drastic change in college sports? Are there any pros in your eyes right now?
Well, the one pro is there. It's more egalitarian, right? So kids have by and large been sort of left at the bus stop, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, we got coaches making $10 million a year for 10 years guaranteed, and they could leave in the middle of the season and go take that new deal. Referencing my alma mater. Why is it that we couldn't? Why is it that the student athletes are locked in as they're locked in? So there is a definite sense of fairness that's being addressed here, and that I really like. I mean, I really like the fact that just as any other person in this country has the right to monetize their name, their image, and their likeness, their intellectual property rights, like absolutely, student athletes should be able to do that. The problem is that we've just done it in such a condensed time frame that it's just exploding, and overtaking the good intention is also our competitiveness to be the best, right? So schools are now outbidding each other, and I know free market's supposed to be great and everything else, but true free market, it's chaotic,
right?
And you're going to lose a lot of opportunities along the way for all those other programs that were the beneficiaries of an arguably unfair system, but they were the beneficiaries, and they're going to lose that opportunity now. And that's the hard part. But to answer your question, Nick, I think it's just far fairer for those that can earn money.
How do you see that developing? Because your time as an athletic director, you've mainly spent within, call it mid-majors. You've handled football programs, universities of that like, but also top-notch Big East programs in Marquette and definitely the Dons here at the WCC. How do you see mid-majors being able to compete in this environment? I'm looking at like even the middling to lower tier Big Tens. Yes, they have money, but in terms of competition, how are they going to sustain that spend and not seeing, call it, the fruits of that investment coming through? How do you see this playing out?
Yeah, Scott, that's a wonderful point, because I don't have high confidence without some sort of regulation. The reason why the NFL is so buttoned up and growing like crazy is because there is a level of competition across the entire enterprise that lets every team compete for the championship, and they actually have a viable chance to win it. Right? That's not the way it is in baseball anymore. And baseball is struggling right now to figure out how to be relevant if you're not the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Mets, right? They're struggling like crazy trying to figure that out. So too, to your point earlier about the NBA, with the soft cap, There's no cap in no effective cap in Major League Baseball. It's an owner's league. You buy as much talent as you can get, and if you get a lot, you win. And then you look at the NBA, which is a soft cap. So it's really more the players that are generating the power there. The NFL, it's a general managers league, right? So you figure out how much talent can you get under this cap, because then you're going to have a chance to win it. And the system they have is set up such great competition that's what their secret sauce is. They've got this unbelievable element of across the board competitive opportunity. And so in college, we're in trouble because we're far more like the Major League Baseball than we are the NFL. Without some sort of mechanism to make this thing competitive, it's going to really be rugged. Not impossible, but really rugged. So you'll see a lot more St. Francis's, as you referenced earlier, Scott, coming across the board. At least that's the way I see it.
I've got a little bit of a selfish question here as a Pac-12 guy from a Pac-12 family.
Oh, yeah.
And it has been pretty tragic to see the disintegration of that conference. I know you guys plucked up a couple as some associate members in the WCC. Thank you for giving our family a home. What is your perspective on this, on what has happened to the Pac-12, this tragedy in my eyes? And just give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's such a shame. For so many years, decades, we looked at Stanford as being sort of the preeminent college sports enterprise that we could ever, aspire to be. And yet they got left at the bus stop, right? The buses pulled away and they got left there because they were not competitive enough in the non-football basketball world. And so nobody was willing to pay money for that. And so it's really a crying shame that league, which had so much awesomeness to it, is now expiring, in the name of TV revenue. That's really what it is. How do you get more TV revenue to compete with, let's say right now it's the SEC. How do you get enough TV revenue to be able to do that and have a chance?
Yeah.
So it's really a shame. I do see it changing as we go, and we'll probably venture into the federating by sport. We'll probably venture into a bunch of other things that we've touched on in this conversation. And I think we'll see a reemergence of a West Coast power league because there's so much talent out here that it just stands to reason that it should happen. And here's the other thing: you guys are sort of crashing through the door of this. I think the way we as consumers receive our sports entertainment that's changing rapidly, right? So it was always ABC, CBS, and Fox came in, right, and NBC, and they had a lockdown on that entertainment. But that's blowing up. Like you guys are emblematic of that, right? So distribution is going to change. Therefore, money's going to change. Therefore, associations are going to change.
That's interesting because we talked about that with the NBA. Like, okay, the traditional TV ratings are down, but they keep harping on how they've done, I don't know, X billion views on their clips on social media. So it's like, hey, our distribution actually globally, how people are seeing things on their phone now, we're still getting NBA basketball in front of a lot of people. But it is kind of crazy to see that.
I wanted to circle it back because we're approaching the NFL draft, everything coming up. The combine has already since passed. I'm just curious, as someone who went through that process, what is going through the minds of those guys? I mean, we're seeing all the clips of Shedeur Sanders and everybody just nitpicking every little detail. How was it going through that process yourself, and how did it end up?
But I remember the anxiety that I had before leading up to the draft. I had a lot of injuries my senior year. I was projected really nicely coming out of my junior year. My senior year I had a bunch of injuries, so my projections were going down, and I was nervous as hell. I talked to my dad the night before, and he says, "Son, why are you so nervous?" And I said, "Well, look, Dad, all my classmates, they're accountants, and they join the accounting firm in the city they want to. for the boss they want to. And all of them across the board have selected where they want to go. Tomorrow, I'll find out where I'm going to go, and it could be anywhere by virtue of this draft. And he says, "Oh, don't worry about it. There's good in every place. Like you go to New Orleans, you get drafted by New Orleans. The food there is phenomenal." He says, you get drafted by New York. It is like that is an awesome city. You're gonna love that if that's the case. If you get drafted by the Rams who were out in California at the time, like that'd be pretty cool. And I said, "All right, Dad, I got you. But what if I get drafted by Cleveland?" There was calm, and he said, "Yeah, son, you got me on that one. I don't know." Sure enough, the next day I get drafted by Cleveland.
Yeah.
So my buddy Mike Golick just laughing his head off because I had always made fun of Cleveland as a classmate of his at Notre Dame. Anyway, what I'm saying is that there's a lot of anxiety on a lot of the guys that aren't Shedeur Sanders. There's just anxiety about where you're going to end up, who you're working for, what's the opportunity to play, how am I going to develop, so it's a tense I don't know, a couple months of your life waiting for that draft.
It's wild. Well, turned out all right for you. Last question from me, and sorry to bounce back kind of to college, but we've seen across the or in your area right there in the Bay Area with Stanford getting Andrew Luck to come be the GM of the football program. And now I guess Cal is kind of pushing for the same thing with Ron Rivera, trying to have a GM with total power. What's your take on this? And do you think more schools are going to go down this path?
Well, I think there's going to be a proof of concept. So the lens is closely beamed on Andrew and Ron. I like the idea. I like the idea of smart guys that have been through the system and understand it, having a lot more power. As an athletic director, that would make me nervous. Right? I mean,
because they're decision makers now.
Yeah. But I think there's, if you have the right trust among the highest administration, I think that might be a really good outcome. It has yet to play out. The other one that I'm watching is North Carolina, where Bill Belichick comes in with who's the cat? He used to be the scout at the Browns.
Lombardi.
Michael
Lombardi.
Yeah. So I'm interested at that one too. And those cats are getting paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
Are they going to be worth it? And are they going to be able to set up systems that really do vet high school players and potential transfers effectively? Stanford's an interesting place because it's so hard to get in there, especially as a transfer. Like, man, that's going to be So I'm really anxious to see how Andrew does.
That kind of furthers your point about the federation process or that pathway. It's like this is almost that first step in that direction, because you're talking about, as an athletic director, having somebody like a decision maker who can fire coaches who are on staff of the university at this point in time coming in. And I feel like that's the first separation step of, say, the football program, just licensing the name of the university to a certain extent.
Yeah. That's actually an insightful way to describe it, Scott. That might be where we head, where there are separate corporations that run your separate sports, and then they license the name to the university. But that's what scares me. I mean, got to keep that connected, because candidly, there's no minor league in our country that's really capturing the nation's attention. And if you separate from the universities too much, then all of a sudden become a minor league. And
that's one of the things we harped on, is like, this is actually a very, very unique thing that the United States has sport leagues that are connected with universities, and people that maybe went to the university or alumni of the university truly have a special connection. Because here in Europe, all the sports teams, they're not connected to schools. There's none of this. And if we go down this path, we're just dissolving an incredibly special tradition to American sports. And so it's quite scary.
Yeah.
Well, look, Dad, I know you got a lot of calls to get to and emails to answer. So we appreciate you joining us here on today's episode, and look forward to having you on for further discussions as this thing evolves, especially in the NIL world.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of interesting stuff that happens, and I'm happy to join anytime you want. There's also much more interesting people out there than me, so I won't be
I
offended
don't believe
if
that.
I get trumped.
Yeah.
So anyway, I appreciate you having me on. It's fun. Fun talking to you
Yeah.
guys. Nick, great to see you.
It is great to see you too, Mr. Williams. Show's over now. Mr.
It is.
Williams.